I'm going to start reading to you from verse 21. I told you, I think millions of times, when you open your Bibles, if you can, read it out loud, because this used to be oral tradition. It wasn't meant, these texts were not meant to be read silently, you in your room, and you were saying, and you're reading it on your own. No, these texts were first said spoken, and then as oral tradition. Hello, not bad, not bad. And as oral tradition, then they were passed on from generation to generation. And what happened was that people started down the track after a couple of generations, or after few decades, they started saying, "Oh, Jesus, for example, Jesus didn't do that. He didn't say that. He said this." And then some others would say, "No, no, we heard him. He was saying that." And because of that, then the church. When I say the church, I don't mean God and angels decided. I said, when I say the church, I mean really those eyewitnesses who've been there, who've seen that, who've seen Jesus, who've heard Jesus. They said, okay, well, the church said, that's what I mean by church. The church said, you might want to sit there because I've got a bad breath. Welcome, Gwen. But I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking this morning, really. Anyway, because there were disputes, that's why it was written down. But if you want to get the real feeling and sense, I keep repeating, read this out loud. What passage are we reading from? So, Gospel of Matthew, chapter 18, from verse 21. That's for the coming Sunday. And then later on, we can talk about monasticism. If you've got some questions. Bobby was supposed to be a presenter, but he did call me a couple of weeks ago and said he can't make it. And so, yeah. All right. Well, let's start reading. So I'm going to read this with my accent. Then Peter came to him and said to Jesus, "Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? Up to 7 times?" Jesus said to him, "I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a certain king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. And when he had begun to settle accounts, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents. But as he was not able to pay, his master commanded that he be sold with his wife and children and all that he had, and the payment be made. The servant therefore fell down before him, saying, 'Master, have patience with me, and I will pay you all.' Then the master of that servant was moved with compassion, released him, and forgave him the debt. But the servant went out and found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. And he laid hands on him and took him by the throat, saying, 'Pay me what you owe.' So his fellow servant fell down on his feet and begged him, saying, 'Have patience with me, and I will pay you all.' But he would not, but went and threw him into prison till he should pay the debt. So when his fellow servants saw what had been done, they were very grieved and came and told their master all that had been done. Then his master, after he had called him, said to him, 'You wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you begged me. Should you not also have had compassion on your fellow servant, just as I had pity on you?' And his master was angry and delivered him to the torturers until he should pay all that was due to him. So my heavenly Father also will do to you if each of you from his heart does not forgive his brother his trespasses." Okay, so this is obviously a story of forgiveness, and Jesus is the best interpreter of the Old Testament. And Jesus tells big truths in a very simple way. and through very simple stories. And he wants to make this for us more approachable. Okay, he wants to drag us into another world where some other laws are ruling. So that's why he starts with these words, and many of his stories starts with these words. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like. And so you will hear this many times. Oftentimes he's going to say, the kingdom of heaven is like, the kingdom of heaven is like. And then he's going to tell a story. Okay. Now, Peter comes to him and said, Lord, how often shall I forgive my brother when, whoever sins against me and, does something wrong to me? How often shall I? Because rabbis, Jesus is a rabbi. And so rabbis at his time were teaching, I think based, no, not I think, but based on Prophet Ezekiel, 2 times, sometimes 3 times. But because Peter knows that Jesus is all about forgiving, he's guessing. That's why he's asking a question up to 7 times. Like, yeah, it's all about forgiving. So is it up to 7 times? Now, the problem with this, because Jewish society was preoccupied with the law. They didn't have, I mean, even if they did have, I think even now, if you go to Israel and if you talk to past Jews, all they were doing is studying the Torah, and the Torah actually means the law of God. And even though, even Australia, we're proud to say that we're free and you do as you want and as you wish and so on, but very much our system is grounded on law and respecting and obeying the law. And so you have legal studies, and it's very important that you obey the law, and everything is ordered through laws and regulations. It's actually a very biblical thing to have a society structured like that. So and that's a good thing. Like if you, for example, okay, and today, people would say, "Oh, I don't give a damn about laws, rules, regulations. I want to be free. I want to do as I like. I want to determine my own self, my own future, my own destiny. I decide what I'm going to be. I decide what gender am I going to be. It's all me, me, me." And so laws are there preventing me to express and who I really believe I should be and what I should do and so on. Now, laws are good in one way. Oh, for example, if that's the case, like I do what I like, there is nothing in this world that you can do as you like. You can't play tennis, football, baseball, rugby, I don't know, whatever. You name the sport you want, and we think this is for fun. But football is full of rules and regulations that you have to adopt. And at first, when you look at the kids, how they start when they start playing tennis, they don't know how to hold a racket, they don't know how to throw a ball, nothing, and then and you try hitting that ball with that racket the way you want it. It just doesn't work. You can't play it like that. So these rules, laws, and regulations, at first, they're very hard. But the kid or you, if you want to learn playing any sport or anything, you have to put so much effort. Then when you watch Novak Djokovic, it looks like he's playing this effortlessly. But he has invested so much time and effort that it now has become effortlessly. And that's actually the point, even with the law of God, that we practice ourselves in the law of God, that it becomes like breathing. It becomes natural for us, that we implement, we live like these tennis players or these excellent football players or rugby players, or you name it, doesn't really matter. That's the point. So that is really an important thing to know, that that's the good side of the law. The bad side of the law is this. Now we're going to come to this, but when and Jesus is actually as I said, the best interpreter of the Old Testament, and he is cursing Pharisees who were more emphasizing human traditions than the law of God. And we read that because yesterday I served at the Greek church, and that was the appointed part that we read when Jesus had this millions of woe to you, Pharisees and scribes, woe to you, Pharisees and scribes, because you are saying that whoever curses the gold that's on the altar is guilty, and whoever curses the altar is not guilty. And then Jesus says, what does sanctify the gold that's on the altar? Well, the altar itself, and so on. So Jesus is saying you should have kept this, but obey the law of God. And what is the most sacred is the law of God, not human traditions. And we have many of those human traditions as well. For example, especially in the Slavic tradition, if you, for example, turn on your YouTube and watch the Patriarch of Moscow or some Russian bishop, how he puts on his vestments. How does that look like? He comes into the church, and then everything is brought to him. He's followed by dozens of lower clergy members, the readers, altar boys, and then the priests, the high-ranking priests. They are in this procession, carrying these vestments at the front, at the very center of the church, and then it's a very sort of an imperial imperial order in Constantinople in the Middle Ages. Now, many of the bishops don't do that. Don't do it like that. Like, you have, patriarchs and so on today that don't do that. They just come inside the church, they put on their vestments, and they don't do it anymore like that. So you've got those human traditions that the church says, well, this isn't really necessary. This is just a pomp, and this is something that has stayed from the Middle Ages. It's not really that important. Okay, so to cut the long story short, this is here exactly. Peter is in this Jewish mindset, obeying the law, being the law, and now he asks Jesus, how many times should I forgive my brother? Now, the problem with how many times is that be it 2, 3, or 7 times, it means that, okay, let's say Jesus said 7 times. You insult me once and I write it down. You insult me twice, I write it down. And I'm just waiting for that moment when you're gonna insult me for the 7th time, so I can. That means that's it. So I'm counting and counting and counting. That's why Jesus says, no. I say 70 times 7 or 77 times 7, which means it's endless. Your way of life should be forgiving. You should always forgive. That's what the Christians should be doing. It's not, oh, I got you now. I'm gonna kick you. All right. So, and it's not that. It's not that. And that's why he says the kingdom of heaven is like. And now he wants to tell us that some other laws and rules and regulations apply in the kingdom of heaven. And that's why he says, a certain king who wanted to settle account with his servant, and when he had begun to settle accounts, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents. Okay, who's got a calculator there on the phone? When in older times, they would say talent is a weight. So 1 talent is 33 kilograms of silver. So can you please count 33 kilograms times 10,000? How many kilograms of silver is that? And I think 1 kilogram of silver is 30,000. So, and 1 kilogram is, I think, around $30,000. So multiply that with 30,000. Let's say 30,000. 1 kilogram. Multiply that by 30,000. So now multiply that with 30,000, just to see how much money did he actually owe him.
9.9E9. I don't know.
So nine billion. Let's say 9 billion. So either Jesus is exaggerating intentionally. He wants to say, okay, this is unimaginable amount that we, because in this parable, obviously the king is God, and we owe God everything. You can't even begin to imagine how much you owe God. So everything you have is from God, and that's this 10,000 talents. One talent, 33 kilograms of silver times 10,000 times, let's say 1 kilogram of silver, $30,000. 9 billion. Okay. I thought it's about $1 billion, but maybe that's 900 millions or something. Anyways, you can't even calculate, which is the point, which is the very point of the parable. Okay. So the point is, we owe God everything that we have, our lives, our families, everything. There is, and there is nothing that we have and that we have not received that as a gift. So the king is now, he wants to settle account with the servant, and he orders, because this man owes him everything, okay, let's say $1 billion. What's an average wage in Australia? It's like 70,000 per year. Okay. How many yearly wages would be if it's $1 billion? I mean, think that would be like 4 lifetimes. Like,
Yeah, you would die first.
that would be but still, why do I say that? Because this servant whose master or king has ordered for him and his wife and his children to be sold, he actually says this. Mind you, all this is very important. He says, have patience with me and I will repay you all. Okay, have patience. So I'm saying, how long should he wait until he pays him all back? 3 lifetimes, 4 lifetimes, like 200 years, what? so and that's the very point, Jesus is exaggerating, I think, intentionally here. Yeah, well, the point is we owe everything to God, and that's the point of this story. So
unlimited forgiveness. Unlimited forgiveness.
Unlimited forgiveness, yes. Now, and the master of the servant was moved with compassion. And this is really important. Jesus is compassionate. God is compassionate, actually. And he released him and forgave him all the debt. Okay. So it's so important to understand that God forgives us everything up front. Okay. He has forgiven this servant. And these are the rules of the kingdom of heaven. Everything is forgiven. Okay. Everything is forgiven. But now something is expected of this servant, and something is also expected from us, from each and every one of us. And that's why I think this is so important. Okay, let's continue. But the servant went out and found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii, and he laid his hands on him and took him by the throat, saying, pay me what you owe. So his fellow servant fell down at his feet and begged him, saying, have patience with me, and I will pay you all. Okay, 100 denarii was owned by this servant whose debt was forgiven. But unlike his debt, that was so great that the king should wait for 3 or 4 lifetimes, this guy owed him 100 denarii, which is about 50 grams of silver, I think, which is a fortnightly wages at that time. So 100 denarii. This guy actually, when he begged him, have patience with me and I will pay you all back, he could have actually waited for 2 weeks and he would pay him all back. But he did not want to do that. Okay. Now, when the king heard this, now this is also important because the king is not hearing this directly, but from the fellow servants who went and reported that. So this is sort of a church, a community where, where others are saying, praying for us or accusing us in a way, and that's also it's not dobbing pretty much, but they are just it's just the relationship that we have with other people are so important that they make the kingdom of heaven actually, or the relationships that we establish with other people make us start living in hell even here and now. So, and he started living in hell even here and now by not forgiving his fellow servant, even though he could have waited for 2 weeks, as I said. Now, because this servant was forgiven everything, and the law of the kingdom of God, which is another world, has been applied to him, but because this servant now wants this law of this world to be applied, he has to be prepared that he is also he's also going to be judged by the same measure. And Jesus will say that by what measure you measure, it will be measured to you by the same measure. So that's very clear that now this servant, that king now changes his decision, and he says, okay, if you want to be measured by this measure, now you're going to be measured with this measure. Everything was forgiven to you, and the only thing that was expected from you is to go and keep forgiving everyone around you. Okay, it's very easy, actually. It's beautiful. It's very easy. And I think if you want to take the words of Jesus seriously, you must forgive. There is no other way. And that's the basic thing in the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us.
But it's not always easy.
Oh, it's not always. Forgiveness, as C.S. Lewis says, it's very nice as a notion, as an idea, but when you actually concretely have to forgive, it's very hard both to give and to receive forgiveness. Both of it is very hard. So, but there is no other way if you want to take the words of Jesus seriously. And it's not supposed to be easy. It is very hard. and no one promised it.
Are you saying receiving forgiveness is hard because it emphasizes what you have done?
Of course. No, well, it emphasizes what you did to me.
Yeah.
And you're forgiving me, but I don't want to receive that forgiveness. I'm going to hold the grudges. Okay, I'm not. I don't want to receive that forgiveness from you. I want to hate you.
Angry.
Yeah, I want to hate you.
I had a boss used to say to me, he goes, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than what it is to ask for permission. And that's just into my head because it'll be like,
on the show, I think.
just go do it, just get it done. And it's like, it's easy. You get it doesn't work out. You just ask them to say sorry. Just say sorry to them. It's all right.
Yeah, well, if in this society, someone has said everything is permitted, but nothing is forgiven, actually.
Yeah.
Nothing is forgiven, actually. It's the other way around. Because, you can do it, but when you say, oh, sorry, forgive me, no, you're not going to be forgiven. Actually, you're not going to be forgiven.
Isn't there a verse that says, if you forgive someone, you pour burning coals on their head? Something like that. You know that verse?
No, actually, no.
Okay.
Any,
Look it up.
yeah, you can try it. So the point is very easy, and it's hard to do it. But yeah, it's hard to give and to receive forgiveness. That's actually the very point of it. But there is no other way. That's also the point. There is no other way. If you want to take the words of Jesus seriously, if you want to consider yourself a Christian.
Is it wrong to think, I want to forgive that person, but I can't do it quickly? You might feel weak, but you think it's just going to take time. Is it okay to look at it that way? Because if someone's like really super hurt you, it's really hard to just forgive because
you might be able to say the words too, but something inside you might not.
Yeah, and sometimes I felt like I've forgiven someone, and then it comes back and went, oh.
And then you haven't. You actually, I realize that you haven't.
Yeah.
That you said it, but it's a process.
I felt it. Yeah.
But it's a process where you have to put an effort into that process. But love is actually healing. What helps there is pray for that person. Pray for that person.
Yeah.
Pray for those whom you hate and who curse you, who persecute you. Apostle Paul, I mean, says that, you know, pray for.
Jesus said, in the enemies,
Yeah, even you know, love your enemies, and that concretely means, you know, if you have some icons, you know, if you have this particular person that you don't like and you hate it, put the picture of that person next to your icon and pray for that person. It's hard, but it's very healing in a way. It's very healing where you forgive that person and ask God for forgiveness. It really is it's a process. It's hard. I mean, that's why I say it's hard, because it's easy to say, you know, sorry, please forgive me, or I forgive you. But then after years, that person comes, and then you just can't look at that in the same direction where that person is. It's just but yeah, as I said, if you want to take the words of Jesus seriously, there is no other way. There is no other way but to actually do it. To actually do it.
It's the central thing.
Yeah, it's actually it's the central theme of the gospel of the Bible. Yeah, it's the central theme of Jesus's ministry. There is nothing more important than that. And love is there for healing, really. And hence now I can continue with monasticism. That's how monasticism has appeared, actually, because people have realized, you know, who've taken the words of Jesus seriously. I can't love this person. I can't forgive this person. I have to withdraw. I have to go into the wilderness, into the desert. And that's how Christians have started withdrawing from the world, because they couldn't take it. They couldn't take it, and they started asking God to grant, because forgiveness is actually the grace of God. It is not even, maybe it's not even in human nature to forgive. I actually think it's in human nature it is to take revenge.
Yeah.
So it's actually a grace of God. It's actually a gift from God to be able to forgive. Because naturally, what you want to do, what your nature, what everything in you screams, oh, punch him back, revenge, because you've been hurt, and you have this rightful this right actually to fight for what's yours. But forgiveness means I give up of this right to pay back and to revenge, because this is mine. You owe me 200 denarii. But forgiveness means I give up of that right of mine and I just let it go. That's why when you actually borrow money, don't borrow money, but when you borrow money, always always actually forget about it. If this person gives it back, that's fine. If you did, forget about it. Yes. And whatever you loan to someone, forget about it. And if that person gives it back, woohoo, you pay, hooray. But if that person doesn't give it back, that's why it's best not to give nothing. because that will spoil your relationship. That will destroy your relationship with that person. You know, money is a horrible thing. It's a devil.
Even on the revenge, if we all seek revenge, there won't be no humans left.
True,
Because
true,
if
yes.
I done something wrong to Josephine, to Julie, she wants revenge, but Julie might do something wrong to you, then you're gonna get rid of it, and we're, you know, it's a
Yeah.
cycle, all gonna take each other out.
Correct. Someone's got to stop.
Yeah,
Someone's got to stop, and someone's got to go above and beyond that.
that's where humbleness comes.
Yeah, and it's a grace from God. It's a gift from God, I think, to be able to do something like that. And so people who couldn't, I think, do this, and they actually withdraw to the desert to pray, to ask God's grace, to be able to have more love. Because ultimately, why I can't forgive you is because I don't love you. It's as simple as that. Like when your child comes to you and asks for, you know, $10, $10,000, whatever, and if you've got it, you're going to give it to your child. But then you're going to forgive. if your child doesn't have, because you love your child, you know, when you have someone really close and you love this person, you're going to forgive. The reason why you can't forgive, you know, your brother, your cum, your friend, your neighbor, because you don't love that person. And now, because there is no love, what needs to be applied is law. Okay, now comes this justice, this notion of justice to make things even. But where there is justice, there is no love there. So what Christians started doing, they started withdrawing to the desert, living by themselves in the desert, in their cells. And St. Anthony the Great is the first monastic in around the year 300. So that's the beginning of 4th century when we have the appearance of first monastics in Egypt. And that's where it all started. And then he had his followers, and St. Anthony had his, and he's called St. Anthony the Great. He had his followers. They started following him, and they started having their own monastic cells there in the caves, in the deserts, and so on. And at first, they would go to the city because they were Christians, and they would go to the city to receive the Holy Communion on Sunday. So still they would go, and for decades and decades, they would still go every Sunday to a local church there in the city to receive the Holy Communion, to the service, because monastics were just ordinary Christians who just decided to dedicate their whole life to Christ. So they weren't priests. They did not have services. The services, so because Christianity is the religion of cities, if you didn't know, Christianity is not a village religion. It's a religion, it's an urban religion. Its cradle are the cities. That's why when apostles were going, they were going to the big cities. Apostle Peter went to Rome. Apostle Paul went to Greece, to Athens, and to all those major capitals, Alexandria. St. Mark, the apostle, went there, to Antioch. Also St. Peter. So all these great cities of the Roman Empire. St. Thomas went to India, as you know. So they went to cities. Beside the point that's important for some other things, how Christianity has actually impacted the culture of the Roman Empire and how it's actually transformed the culture of the world pretty much. Because Christians were claiming everything, pretty much everything in terms of whatever is true, it's ours. You know, that's why Christians were never arguing with pagans. Like, you know, they were never they were arguing with philosophers, because philosophers were always saying, "Oh, we know the truth," like Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, what was kind of popular at that time. All of them knew that Zeus is not real. It's mythology. That Athena is not real. That's just a mythological creature, or Apollo, and these, all these deities of the pagan Roman Empire. Everyone knew, and no one laid their own life for Apollo or Zeus or Athena or these made-up deities. Everyone knew that they're just made up. They're just myths and legends and stories. But on the other side, how many people have given their life for Christ, for Jesus? And that's one of the things we know it's the truth. So as I said, I'm going back to St. Anthony, who is the founder of monasticism, as we know it. And then it kind of became popular in the whole Roman Empire, which is the known world at that time. And people were just going, and especially what impacted there is actually so many people have become Christians at that time, especially since Constantine in the year 313 has legalized Christianity, and then Saint Theodosius in, I think, mid-4th century, and it's not actually mid-4th century, After Constantine, you've got Constance, his son, then you have Julian, the apostate. So maybe in the 440s, 440s, you got Theodosius, who made the church and Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. And that created huge problems actually for Christians. Because if you wanted to succeed in public life, like today, if you want to be a judge, if you want to be prime minister, if you want to be minister, what you had to do at that time, you had to convert to Christianity. So many people have converted to Christianity for opportunistic reasons, because they wanted to succeed in their career. Okay. And true Christians, they said, this is disgusting. We can't watch this. So that's why you have this huge movement of monastic movement actually when Christianity was legal, not just legalized, but made the official religion of the Roman Empire, that you've got true Christians actually withdrawing from the world, running into the desert, and that became very, very popular. And they become really the pillar of the truth in the church, really, because if it was up to those guys in the cities, it would all be gone, you know. I don't know. People have written PhDs on this topic. So I kind of think that it's best if you got some questions that I kind of respond to these questions. If you've got something about monasticism, how they're dressed, why do they wear this, when did they start wearing this, when did they start building more, or I don't know, practical questions or something like that. Have you ever met some monastic, some monk or a nun? Yeah. You don't have mixed monasticism in the church. You've got either monasteries where you have only males, monastics, or you have convents where you only have women living. So you can't have two of them together. You know also that they change their names. When someone is tonsured to become a monk, he changes his Christian name and adopts a new name, and he adopts some saint to be his or her protector or patron saint, and that's why they have this odd names. But that's not their Christian name.
Do they choose it, or is it chosen for them?
Oh, it depends. It depends from monastery to monastery.
Okay.
Oftentimes, a spiritual father or an abbot of the monastery would come to a novice. So you got today, not just today, but for at least 1,000 years, what you have, a person who wants to become a monk has to go through a period of novice. I think it's novice, which lasts 3 years. So you have to be a novice for 3 years. And that would make your life really difficult through those 3 years. So it's kind of a time of trials and temptation. So because this is life, you take the monastic vows, and that means, whether you're going to take it seriously, because this is for priests, there is no vow of celibacy, but it's not obligatory. But for monastics, there is a vow of celibacy. So you got to really be certain whether you want to remain a celibate or not. And that's difficult because you're a human being and so on. Or, the vow of poverty, the vow of obedience, and so on.
So it's not something you think, oh, I'm going to go in for, maybe about 20 years, I might go in.
That's right. Oh, it's not like a job. Yeah. I'm going to work in this company and then I'm going to change it.
Experience.
Yeah.
For a monk to have the right to do liturgy, does he have to achieve a rank, another rank?
He has to be ordained as a priest, as I'm ordained as a priest. There is no difference.
Well.
Yeah, they're called
Yes, priest monks.
I
Yes.
was watching a live story of Saint Gabriel of Georgia.
Yes.
Which was a lovely thing, and he was a monk and a priest.
Yes, and nowadays, because there is not so many monks, usually if they're not on Mount Athos still has that, where the majority of monks are just simple monks. They're not priests. They would ordain only a small amount of monks to be priests, to serve the liturgy, and that's it. So but usually if you go around, many monks are actually ordained priests because there is just a need for priests, you know.
So in the women's monastery, they must have a priest.
They have to have a spiritual father,
Yeah.
a priest, who usually lives in a separate house somewhere. Usually, for example, in the Russian monastery now we have in Kuma down Bombala way, they have a monastery and they have a convent, but they're separated like 30-40 k's. And someone from the monastery, some of the brothers would go on week when they have liturgies, and that the liturgy would be once a week or 2 or 3 times a week. That depends on the rule in monastery. But then regularly daily services would be done by females. Like as I have, for example, Gregory here in our church, I say, you read Vespers. So you as a Christian can actually perform all the services except for the liturgy. For the liturgy, you need to have a priest, ordained priest, of course. But Matins, Vespers, and all, you've got 9 services in the daily cycles, and monastics actually follow that rule. They have the hours, the first hour, the 3rd hour, the 6th hour, the 9th hour, and so on. The Matins and Vespers and midnight office and this and that. So altogether 9. Yeah, so they do change the name. They need to be novices for 3 years at least. Sometimes it's 2 years shortened if they already have experience in the church and so on. It's shortened for 2 years. What else is from monastics in the Orthodox Church since the 9th century? Only monastics can be elected to be bishops. So all of the bishops in the Orthodox Church are actually monastics. They're monks, monks who are then ordained to be bishops. So if you see a bishop in the Orthodox Church, he's not married. He's a monastic. So what else? In the Roman Catholic tradition, all of them are actually celibate. All the priests are celibate, the bishops and archbishops and cardinals, whatnot, the Pope, they're all celibate, and they don't have married clergy like in the Orthodox Church, according to tradition, as we have it since the very beginning. Yeah, Apostle Peter was married, and most of the apostles were actually married, and so on.
But the Catholic priests were married for 1,000 years.
No.
They weren't.
No, the Western tradition never had that.
Never
had that.
When they were together, though.
Even when we together, when we were one church, the Western Church always had the discipline of celibacy. Always had the discipline of celibacy. Never like it was actually that's an interesting thing if you didn't know it. It was actually because Apostle Paul said that. He said, if you can be unmarried, stay unmarried, but it's not good for you because the devil will tempt you and so on and so on. In the Orthodox Church, a priest can't get married, by the way.
He's already a priest.
Yes, you can be ordained as married. Once you become a priest, you can't marry anymore. Okay. So if you have to decide before you are ordained as a priest, you have to decide whether you're going to be married or not. But once you are ordained, you cannot go through the sacrament of marriage again.
What is the thinking behind that?
The thinking behind that is that priesthood is the highest sacrament that can be offered to someone, or a gift that can be offered to someone, and you have to be mature in your life. So, and that's why it was forbidden for anyone below 35 to be ordained as a priest, anyone below 30 to be ordained as a deacon.
Oh, wow.
So, and anyone below 40 to be ordained as a bishop. The canon law of the church is very clear when it comes to that. Why? Well, the thinking is as Apostle Paul says, he has to be a bishop. He actually speaks for the bishop. The bishop has to be a husband of one wife. An example of a good house, how do you say, an example of good ordered household and this and that, taking care of his family and this and that. So you got to be proven to be a mature person where you, okay, and you know that, you know, those of you who are married, before you got married,
Life was easy.
life was easy. You had no responsibilities. You've not, and once you're married, you actually become,
It gets better.
no, but you mature.
Yeah.
Now your life is your life, but it's not about you.
Yeah.
Now you've got a wife. Now, and then when kids come, then your life is not your life. Then is not the, no, you've got no life. All right. No. Yeah, but it's beautiful, you know. You give yourself, you sacrifice yourself for your kids. Now, if you're able to do that, the thinking behind that is the church says, okay, if you can run your own family, that's why the priest is called a father. Then you can be a father to someone else. Okay. And if that fails, all right, goodbye. You can't be a priest anymore. Okay. That's right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So if a priest was to get separated or whatever, it's done, is it?
Done. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Canon law is very clear there. It's done. Because the church gives you the ordination, gives you the priesthood, and the church can take it away from you. Whereas in the Roman Catholic Church, you have this thinking that the seal of priesthood cannot be erased, like you're a priest forever, which is not true. This is something that the church gives you. Okay, that's why in the ordination, and go if you hear, and it's very rare in Australia, but if you hear there is somewhere ordination for a deacon or for a priest in some Orthodox jurisdiction, go and watch that service. It's beautiful because the bishop at some point, before he puts the vestment that are the symbols of the office of priest or deacon, he actually lifts up that part of the vestment, faces the people and says axios, or that means he's worthy. But the people has to respond, axios, or he's worthy. All right, there has to be confirmation from the people. Yeah, but there is a process. You know, there is a process how someone is being ordained. There has to be an examination. Is he really okay? Is he, you know, his life and this and that? And so that goes through a process, and then, yeah. But the point is, the people is asked. And today is just a formality, but you will hear it that whole people are saying dostoin or axios or he's worthy and so on. So, and everyone shouts and screams, okay, which is very unorderly, but that's very typical for us Orthodox.
So what happens if the priest is honest, loving, godly, and his wife is a cheater and the marriage was broken because of her, and he didn't commit any crimes against God? Can he keep his priesthood?
That's not the case. I know of all the cases that I know, always the priest is the bastard. So I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Always the priest is a scumbag and he puts everything on the wife. But
Have you addressed why the priest who gets ordained while he's single, why that's why he can't get married? Is that because
all right, because the priesthood is, yes, because all the sacraments are performed by the priest. And so I'm a priest and I'm in the church. And the marriage is also within the liturgy. All the sacraments were within the divine liturgy. And so now I'm a priest and I'm serving a liturgy, or if there is 10 priests, doesn't matter, we're all serving. What do I do now? Take off my vestments and I go and get married? All right, I go through another sacrament, you understand? My place, so in the church, when you're baptized, the priest lays his hand on you or on someone who's baptized. This is laying on, this is sort of an ordination in a way. Every person is actually ordained in the church, because when you're baptized in the Orthodox Church, the priest actually puts the hand, and the prayer says, in your name, Lord our God, I put my hand on your servant, and then the name, who's found worthy to come to your holy refuge, to find refuge in your holy name in the church. That's ordination. That's the first prayer that the priest actually says for everyone who comes to be baptized in the Orthodox Church. So that ordination means now you've got a spot in the church, you've got a service in the church. It's like a football team, let's say, we have right wing, left wing, center, back, this, defense, and so on. So everyone has a service to do in the church. Now it's very obvious only for the clergy that they've got some service, but actually everyone's got a service to do, to fulfill. And the spot, the visible physical spot of the priest is in the altar, in the sanctuary. And we know exactly when there is 10 of us, the priest, who stands there, who says what, who does what. All right? And if there is 10, if there is 20, if there is 1, doesn't matter. Us, and we've got the vestments, we've got this and that. So we have our own spot. And now the priest, a role to play, yes. Now, I'm already a priest. How can I now go and be married or be baptized again or receive another sacrament when I'm the one who is to be giving sacraments to others? Okay, do you understand? So I'm there to give sacrament to others, to perform that. I can't then, because the liturgy is not a drama, a play where I now act that I'm Romeo, and then I'm acting I'm Juliet, and I'm acting that I'm I don't know, Henry VIII or whatever. So I'm not changing my outfit in this, in order to, do something else. I have to give up on priesthood and say, thank you very much, I'm not doing this. Can you please allow me to stay Christian? I'm going to get married. That's the honest thing to do. Okay? If I want to get married.
In the
Of course,
yeah,
of
yeah,
course.
I don't
It's
know.
happening everywhere.
Priests have given
You
up.
don't understand that
I
still?
still can't see why he can't just get married. And even though it's a sacrament, I'm not saying it's wrong, I just say I don't follow it.
Okay. Can you be a left wing and right wing at the same time when you're playing footy? That's the thing. You're either one side or the other side. Okay. In the church, where is the priest's position? What is the priest doing at the sacrament of marriage? He is the one who is administering it.
Yes.
So he can't be the one who receiving it. You understand? Very practical.
Can he just take a short break and
Go
get
to a
someone marry him?
Well,
and then go back?
Yeah, but there is no acting, as I said. I can't play. It's not a play. It's a serious thing. Okay. It's you gotta take it seriously. This is something I do. This is my life. I'm not a priest 9 to 5.
Is it like,
That's
is
the
it?
thing, he's making a decision too when he decides. to
This is
become a priest
something
without
something
being
that's-
He knows the rules.
He knows that,
I get that.
Yeah. But now you also need to kind of. I'm
Yeah, 'cause
trying
I
to.
thought you were going to say something like, if he becomes a single priest, he's looking after the church, and then if he gets married, his responsibilities are directed towards his family, and so he doesn't have as much energy for the church. It's nothing like that.
Yeah, but that's a moral thing that cannot be. I'm talking to you purely theologically, very practically, because the role of the priest is there to serve the liturgy, to perform that duty. That's his thing, to administer the sacraments, not to receive the sacraments unless he's on deathbed.
Is it
Then
rare for a single priest?
I was going to ask about
That's
that.
right. Yes.
The unction sacrament is the only sacrament he'll be able to receive.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Yes, because I'm dying and
Yes,
that's it. Yes.
Is it rare for a single man to become a priest?
The Greek priest is a single priest.
Yeah. No, in the Greek
In
church.
Orthodox?
Yeah.
Yes.
The
Fa-
will not.
Oh, they're always single for life.
No.
They're legal,
The
they're
current
legal.
Oh, this one.
This one
yeah.
particular,
Oh,
yes.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So
Because
there are some.
no, they are, yes. And that's the decision you got to make before you become a
And they
priest.
might read what Paul says, and if Paul says it's good,
Yeah,
and they
That's
are inspired by that. Maybe.
that's right. Yes.
It's funny. If we actually continue reading, as we were reading this part of the gospel, if you actually continue reading and start from chapter 19:7, it talks about marriage.
Oh, yeah.
And how you want me to read it?
Yeah.
So I'm starting chapter 19, verse 7. They said to Jesus, why then did Moses command to give a certificate of divorce to put her away. And he said to them, Moses, because of the hardness of their hearts, permitted you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery. Whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery. His disciples said to him, if such is the case of man with his wife, it is better not to marry. But he said, he's talking about not marriage.
Mhm.
Yeah, but he said to them, all cannot accept this saying, but only those to whom it has been given. There are eunuchs who were born thus from their mother's womb, and there are eunuchs who were made eunuchs by men, and there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. So that's someone like
Monastics.
monastic.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
right,
eunuch?
yes.
You made himself a eunuch,
What's
decided
this
not to get married for the
What's that word mean?
eunuch.
Eunuch, castrated, D6.
Oh,
Does it?
That's right.
Yes.
Eunuch means someone who's D6. In
Oh.
the Roman Empire, you had a whole order of eunuchs, and on the court, especially on ladies' court, you couldn't have men working there, slaves, ordinary slaves. They were first D6, which means eunuchs. They were D6. They were
I see.
castrated. That's right, totally cut off, and they lose all their sexual desires because there's no hormones anymore. Yeah.
Is this,
But
did this
since
happen
they're for
with
their-
pagans and Jews, or just one of them? Like they had a tradition of eunuchs in, was it the Jewish people that did that?
No, Jews that never did that. That's forbidden.
Pagan
That's forbidden. That's pagan. I'm talking. Yeah, I'm talking.
Roman-
Hey, in the Roman
Can
Empire.
you
That's
just
right.
follow
Yeah.
that? So verse 12 says, for there are eunuchs who were born thus from their mother's womb.
That's right.
So
And
they're
you know
born
someone.
eunuchs.
Yeah,
I thought
born.
it's like a eunuch, like someone like a great person.
No, D6, and you've got people who are born like with faulty, and they don't have
okay,
that.
I'm with you. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's right. They are eunuchs who are made eunuchs by men.
Yeah.
And that was
Yeah.
at Jesus' time. Everyone, if you've got, because you had polygamy at that time, and you've got 10 wives, and someone has to serve these wives, you're not going to trust a slave, and you've got slavery, of course, which was legitimate at that time. And if he's going to work for those wives, you're not going to trust him. You're going to castrate that person. You're going to de-sex that person and make him work for you. Yeah.
Mind blown. I didn't know that. Eh?
Oh, absolutely.
What
That's
does
it.
Jesus say about these eunuchs in that verse?
He says there are eunuchs who are born from their mother's womb. There are eunuchs who are made eunuchs by men, and there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's
they like
sake,
keeping clean.
which means they have not literally castrated themselves, but that sexual pleasure,
Oh,
they've given up of that, which means they don't want to get married, they don't want to have sexual intercourse or anything. That's right. And they've decided, this is about monastics pretty much. Those who have decided not to have anything sexual with anyone, and that's it. Which is very difficult, but Jesus says, and he says, he who is able to accept it, let him accept it. So that's a gift from God. Someone has received that gift.
the Catholic Church, they had eunuchs, didn't they? I think in about the 4th century, there's a very well-known, I can't think of his name, very well-known Catholic theologian who became a eunuch.
No, they're talking that Origen, one of the greatest theologians from the 3rd century, that he was a eunuch, but he never was actually. That's just a made-up story from Jerome. But the church actually forbid that. The church actually always has forbidden that practice. And they said, if you can make yourself a eunuch in terms of, because once you actually physically remove your body parts, you actually don't feel the desire, and then there is no point. The point is actually to fight the desire. All right. The point is in fight, like we talk about forgiveness. The point is it's difficult to receive and give forgiveness, but that the point is in growing up, maturing as a person, to come to that point when you, as a mature person, when you can say, you know what, I understand, I forgive you, or you know what, I accept your forgiveness. I truly accept your forgiveness. That's a mature person. That takes time to come to that point. As with you, as with eunuchs, it's easy to cut off, physically remove those body parts, and you don't feel the desire. That's not the point. The point is actually to come to that point. You know what? As Jesus says, in the kingdom of God, they neither marry or divorce. We will not have that sort of sexual desire there. And as you know, when you know, that's the most wonderful thing that I've seen is two old married people, you know, and they're in their 80s, they're holding each other hands. There's nothing sexual there. For years, there has been nothing sexual there. It's just pure love. And you know, and that's the goal actually, to come to that point where you just have this pure love for this other person, nothing else. And it grows and grows and grows. Because it would be hell if you would be just in your 20s and only have this sexual desire. Okay, love changes. The way you love someone, that changes, and it should change. It should grow. It should grow. Okay, it should grow. It does. You know,
I had a
as we
question.
know.
You brought it up.
I'm sorry.
it-
This has gotten us to the level.
A question.
Gregory, can you please bring us some more water, or someone who is giving us water?
You know how I've heard, like you mentioned before, it's a very important thing to come before you become a monastic, because I heard that if you become a monastic and you get back to thing, that's a very sinful act, and I don't know if it's forgivable. I've heard stories. Like that.
Everything is forgivable.
I heard that a lot of punishments have happened, deaths and stories of how two brothers went to become monks, and one of them pulled back and went back to him, got married, and even his wife died, he died, and he saw his brother in hell.
Look,
I'm just saying.
Jesus is here saying clearly everything is forgiven to us up front. What happens in these cases, because I know a person who was a monk for 15 years.
Yeah.
One of the greatest guys I've ever met. And he went out of the monastery and got married. And got a kid. And then divorced. And found another wife. And got another kid. And then divorced, and he's now alone. Because people, you know, you do these sort of things when you're in your 20s, I guess, maybe 30s, but I advise in your 20s, when you can adjust. And this guy, when he was in his 20s and early 30s, he was in the monastery. He doesn't have the social skills to be married. He doesn't know what does it mean to be married. And he thought, okay, he had this romantic vision of what marriage is. Marriage is hard, man. It's hard. And it's a martyrdom. And it's it's how it should be. But he thought, probably, or whatever. But most of these people who actually leave monasteries, they just don't have, they're not serious, they're not mature. Because they think, oh, this is going to be easier. Nothing is easy. Monasticism isn't easy. Marriage isn't easy. Nothing is easy in life. And that's the point of Christianity. Whoever promised you that life is easy, whatever sort of life you choose, lied to you. Nothing is easy. And it's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be difficult.
True. I mean, if you look at all the saints and martyrs, they all suffered. No one had an easy life. It's always
no one had an easy life.
Yeah.
And that's how it's supposed to be. That's fine.
But when you listen to
the only point is, well, am I going to torture myself because I want to fulfill my... The only thing is, am I going to torture myself because I want to fulfill my own wishes, desires, and wants? Because I'm also torturing myself when I want that. Or, which is a Christian thing, I'm going to torture myself because I'm going to give myself for you. And that's the greatest thing ever. When I sacrifice myself for you, when I give myself for the other person, when I put the needs of others before my own needs, that is a true Christian life. When I think about you before I think about me, that's the ultimate thing. I'm going to be tortured anyways. Oh, I want more money. I want more pleasure. I want more sex. I want more drugs. I want more, all of these pleasures. And I'm tortured because I always need more. You try it. Ask alcoholics, or if you have been alcoholic or addicted to something, you want to please yourself. And you're tortured because you always want more, and more. and you can't stop it. But if you actually think about it in the other way around, okay, I'm going to serve your needs. I'm going to serve you. I'm going to put your needs before my own needs. You're still going to torture yourself, but you're going to find such a pleasure in that when you help someone, when you actually give yourself for someone else, and you see that the change in that other person, and that does, someone will thank you, and Jesus says that. Someone will thank you, someone won't thank you, someone will respond to you with bad things. But Jesus still says, do good and don't expect nothing in return. Love your enemies. I mean, we have to take these words seriously. And that's it. And you'll have the kingdom of God. It can't be any more clear than that.
And if you feel like today everybody's recording themselves when they're giving to the poor, and
it's not everyone. It's not everyone.
There
There is, but you hear about that because that's what's shown on social media. There's many more actually people who are helping, and they don't want to be seen. They don't want to be seen, and that's what actually counts. Because these guys who are recording themselves, what do they want? They want to be applauded. And they want that reward. They got that reward. They're not going to get it from God. Those people who are hiding their good deeds, they're going to get a reward from God, because they're not doing it for applause, to be admired or whatever. Yes, yeah. All right. Any questions? Because we had some. It's 10:15 almost.
Just a comment, like in Romans 12, Paul says,
wait, what? Yeah.
never take revenge, leave that to the righteous anger of God. For the scriptures say, I will take revenge, I will pay them back. So God's saying, if you're angry at someone, it's God's job. If there's vengeance, it's up to God. It's not you. Your job is to forgive.
Yes.
I think it's not easy to take that on if you're angry. It's really encouraging. Yeah.
No,
You don't have, if you can take hold of that, you can release the anger, saying, if God wishes to execute justice or chasten them or do anything, it's up to have faith that God will do that. Because we're trying to even the score, which often just makes it worse. It just builds anger.
Yeah, and what that part is saying, you can only see this side.
Yeah.
You've got this perspective.
Yeah.
And you don't know fully who that person is. Maybe that person is helping the poor, and you don't see that. Maybe he's feeding the hungry. And God knows that.
You have a narrow vision.
You've got this, or you only have this perspective. You can only see this side.
Yeah.
He has hurt me. But God knows his heart.
And God loves them as much.
And God still loves them. That's right. Everyone, every single one. And so if you love yourself, you're going to forgive others. Because if you want mercy from God, you have to give mercy to others. Whenever you are tempted to judge others, just remember your own sin. Do you want your own sin to be forgiven? Do you want to be healed? If you want to be healed, and if you ask for mercy, you got to show mercy. And that's the basic thing. That's why the fathers of the church and monastics have always been saying, always have death in your mind. Memento mori, remember death, remember death. Remember your own sin, your own sinfulness. So
there's even a specific verse. I think Jesus says, if you don't forgive your Father in heaven,
well, that's right. This is here. My heavenly Father also will do to you if each of you from his heart, because there is no other forgiveness but from heart. And this is emphasized by Jesus, does not forgive his brother his trespasses. That's it. From the heart. There is no other way. This, I'm sorry, that's just crap.
Father, is there a righteous anger? And I feel like there is.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Yes, there is.
Didn't Elias Sekilia in his anger killed?
Yeah, but then God fired him. I told you that.
But he
sacked him. Yeah, there is righteousness, but Elijah was self-righteous, pretty much.
But without action, it's a righteous anger that you might.
Well, it
No,
depends
there
on
is
this-
that. There
yeah.
depends on on the situation.
'Cause
Yeah,
I feel like if
Well, Jesus had righteous anger. You had the
Of-
temptation.
that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
That's
that's
right.
right.
Yes, yes.
I feel like there is,
But then
times
Apostle
you
Paul
can
says-
get
Apostle
angry
Paul
at
says,
someone without really judging them, just being.
Apostle Paul says, now I'm translating from Serbian. It says, "Be angry, but do not sin. Let not sun set in your anger."
Yeah.
So do not allow for the sun to set so that this day ends and you're still angry. Okay.
Yeah.
So it means there is a righteous anger, when you want to do things right, because you know it. And that's a constant fight, especially as you grow older and as you mature. And you've got experience in job, for example, you're doing this job for 10 years or 5 years or whatever, and some apprentice comes to you and he's not going to tell you what to do. All right, you know what to do. All right. So, but then, and this is now where you have to kind of be humble, but also be, you're right. You know these things, and it's okay if you're working with cars, but if you're working with people, people who are doctors and nurses, or they have to do things. There's no mistake. You're going to kill a person, you're going to make this damage for life. All right, you have to know what you're doing, and you have to correct. You have to stop this other person or this other doctor or nurse or whatever, saying, no, this is not the way you're doing it. All right, so there is more responsible and less responsible jobs or duties or vocations in this life, where sometimes you have to, depending on situation. But then, if you're experienced, you got to know, okay, this is what needs to be done. And if anger needs to be there, some people are not, can't be, they can't be told in other ways. I don't know. Yeah. You've got to be firm, not so much, because no, not aggressive. Anger doesn't mean to be aggressive. Yeah.
What is greater, courage or humbleness? Are they both the same?
I think there is no faith without courage. I told you, but then once you have faith, then the next thing is to be humble about it. Yeah. All right. Any other kind of comments or questions or?
Are you guys getting married?
No.
Gregory, a question?
No? Nothing about monasticism, monastics?
Gregory, can I ask a question?
I have some excerpts from sources about monasticism.
Mhm.
What I read.
Yeah. Can you hear Gregory, guys?
No.
No.
Very quiet.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Now we can.
Okay. This is I have excerpts from primary sources about people talking about monasticism, in the I'm not sure what years, be around 400 or something. But this is John Cassian. He was an ascetic. He lived from 360 to 435. He's talking about admission to a monastery. So I'll just read it.
Yeah.
One then who seeks to be admitted to the discipline of the monastery is never received before he gives by lying outside the doors for 10 days or even longer. An evidence of his perseverance and desire, as well as of humility and patience, and when prostrate at the feet of all the brethren that pass by, and of set purpose repelled and scorned by all of them, as if he was wanting to enter the monastery not for the sake of religion, but because he was obliged, and when too covered with many insults and affronts, he has given a practical proof of his steadfastness, and has shown that he will be like in temptations by the way he has borne the disgrace. And when with the ardor of his soul thus ascertained he is admitted, then they require with the utmost care whether he is contaminated by a single coin from his former possessions clinging to him. For they know that he cannot stay for long under the discipline of the monastery or ever learn the virtue even of humility and obedience, or be content with the poverty and difficult life of the monastery, if he knows that ever so small a sum of money has been kept hid. But as soon as ever a disturbance arises on some occasion or other, he will at once dart off from the monastery like a stone from a sling, impelled to this by trusting in that sum of money. So they make sure he has no money, because otherwise he'll just leave.
But they made,
Extreme.
but for 10 days, he's ignored.
Yeah.
He's not even received behind the walls, because monasteries were always
Oh,
kind
gated.
of gated, like with the walls. And then he was just made to wait there. So he was very hungry and thirsty for those 10 days. And then insults.
Now I have Jerome talking about life in a monastery. As the sick are attended with wonderful devotion, food being made ready for them in plenty, those in good health practice a stricter abstinence. Twice a week, on the 4th and 6th day of the week, they fast entirely. Twice a week, on the 4th and 6th, that's like Wednesday and Friday.
Yeah, Wednesday.
So I guess,
Because Saturday is the 7th day, so yeah.
so I think we get this from like monasticism too.
What?
The Wednesdays and Fridays.
No, from the apostles. The first mentioning of the fasting on Wednesdays and Fridays is the daher, which was
Yeah,
actually
that's right.
which was considered actually part of the Bible by some fathers, and it's the oldest. It's older than some of the books of the New Testament. Yeah. It's a teaching of the 12 apostles.
It is, yeah,
It's a teaching of the 12 apostles, and they mention fasting on Wednesdays and Fridays. Sorry,
Because it was a Jewish tradition anyway. to
No, it
fast
was-
Mondays.
Tuesday and Thursday.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they fast entirely except at Easter and Pentecost. On other days, those who wish to do so take their meal after midday, so too at supper the table is laid for the sake of the sick, the old, the young, and those in high fever. Some eat but little at the second meal, others are satisfied with but one meal, be it luncheon or supper. Not a few just take a bite of bread and then go out. All take their meals together. If anyone does not wish to come to table, he has an allowance in his cell of bread and water only, with salt, for 1 day or two, according as he desires. I don't know if this is interesting.
What's interesting to me is the hospital. Actually, that's what that they actually started, because nowhere in the Roman world, which was, the order and structure of the Roman world was slavery, and you had free citizens. Hospitals are Christian inventions. If you look at the history of hospitals and medical science, Harvard, Oxford, you name it, it's actually a Christian invention. And it started actually from Christians. No one before that thought that, if someone is sick, you can take care of it. I mean, your family may take care of you, but that's it. It was nowhere in even at the back of the mind that, the government or the society should actually take care of someone who's sick. No way. That was never heard. It's unheard of. But when Christianity started growing, and when you have Saint Cyprian of Carthage and the famous Cyprian's plague, and that's the 2nd century. Cyprian is saying, and Carthage was a huge city, and there was a plague at that time, and people and the wealthy people would just leave the city, and they would go into the countryside on their farm, and left the poor people actually to die in the city. And Cyprian was the bishop. He says, you are not allowed to leave anyone sick there lying. You have to. What did our Lord say? I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me food. And then, as Jesus says, when did we do that, Lord? And Jesus says, whenever you did this to the least of my brethren, you did it to me. And Cyprian says, we are obliged to not look at whether they are our brothers and sisters. Every human being is our brother and sister. And Christians started in the 2nd century. And one of the reasons why Constantine legalized Christianity, even though Constantine did not receive baptism until his deathbed, was actually the charitable works of Christians.
Mm. Mm.
He was receiving reports. Constantine, first and foremost, was a good emperor. He was a good diplomat. He was a good politician. He was a good leader. So he was receiving reports from one end of the Roman Empire to the other end. Whenever there is a fire, whenever there is a hunger, whenever there is distress, the first people who would come and help were Christians. And Constantine was probably thinking, these people are good for the empire. I think that was, I'm just saying, because Christians were just doing the right thing, and they would just do the right thing. Because you have Emperor Augustus, in time when Jesus was born, and I was reading that speech to you, when Emperor Augustus turned to his soldiers and said, "This is the time in which we live," and they had silk from India, and they had all the spices from all around the world in Rome. At that time, this is 1st century, the most wealthiest empire, and they had everything you can imagine. Being a Roman citizen at that time was like being an American or Australian today compared to any other. They had all the privileges, all the rights. And Augustus, when they came back from the battle, says to them, "Why don't you have children? Separate left-hand side those who are married, right-hand side those who are not married." And 70% were not married. They didn't have families. And he started screaming at, "Why don't you perform your civic duty? To whom will we leave this empire? Because you don't want to have children, or you don't want to get married, you just want to enjoy yourself." This is 1st century, okay? We think this is the new thing. No. And they even had incentives in the Roman Empire to get married, to have children and so on. No one listened. No one listened. The Roman Empire has failed who stayed Christians, because it's a gift from God. It's a grace from God, really. Anyways,
Just reminded me of something I read. Even in China in the last 50 years, there's been periods where the government is surprisingly tolerant of Christian groups because they can see the charitable works they do and how beneficial it is to society. It's very interesting.
yeah.
And it fluctuates.
It fluctuates. It depends which branch of Christianity, because I think, are you watching Alone on SBS? Like Alone on Antarctica? And
No,
it's a
it's on-
great series. You have
Just
to
seen the
watch it.
commercials,
Oh my
yeah.
God.
It's good.
Beautiful. It's great.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
medicine.
Yeah,
That's satanic. as
well,
well.
he's said in satanic. I thought that was like the rod of Moses with the snake.
Oh.
Isn't that Seneca something? Like,
is
or
it?
If you look at the satanic
say.
thing, they got the same thing with the serpent going like this.
Well, to be honest, Google doesn't tell you much. It tells me 1,000 different articles. One talks about it being part of the Christian thing. One talks about some Greek god. One talks about some other magical stick.
Yeah, what they've chosen doesn't really matter, because even the cross, you've got, people
Well, yeah,
are
yeah,
saying,
right.
"Oh, you had cross in Egypt, you had cross
Yeah,
in."
well, of course.
That doesn't really matter what was it used
It's what it
for.
means to us.
It's
Yeah,
what it means to us.
yeah, for sure.
Because, for example, you can see swastikas, like Nazi swastikas. If you go to Rome, into Roman catacombs, that was a regular sign of the cross for early Christians.
Even in the Buddhist temples, the old Buddhist
Yes,
paintings have.
but today,
Mm.
you're not going to put it, if we are painting the church, we're not going to put swastika in the church, that kind of cross,
Yeah.
because that means today something else, all right? And I'm not going to go around my parish saying, "Oh, no, that's not Nazi." Oh my God. So that symbol, whatever it meant before, doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Today is a symbol of medicine, And we all know that hospitals were Christian invention. They were invented by Christians, and it's a purely Christian thing, you know. And even when in this world we say, that's such an injustice, you know, these people are suffering, hungry, and so, you know, in their own world who would say that? No one. They didn't have any sort of a compassion for, you know, abortion. It's a totally legal thing, you know. Nothing was wrong, you know. You can kill your own daughter, it doesn't really matter. Women were not even considered citizens.
Didn't they have physicians?
No,
Not even physicians. Huh?
no, you had no physician. There was no school, nothing.
If you're sick, that was it.
No, that's it. You had remedies,
Yeah.
you know, on this.
Home traditional. Yeah.
That's right. And people, you know, there was Seneca was, you know, one of the first. You had that developed in a way, but that this is the right for everyone. No way.
Wow.
No way.
That's a very Christian.
Low mortality.
Only if you are wealthy and you've got your own medicus or whatever they call it. That's it. But it was not regulated because that was not the job of the government. The government is not there to take care of the people. The government is there to take the money, and that's it, and to send you to war. That's what's and you're a slave. You have no rights whatsoever. Even this notion of rights, that's a Christian thing.
Yeah.
Equality, Christian thing. You know, that never existed in any civilization in any empire before Christianity. Slavery was abolished thanks to Christians, thanks to this biblical notion that we're all equal, thanks to Christ.
What century did the first hospitals happen?
That's as I said, we mentioned when we had COVID, I mentioned Cyprian of Carthage, which is the 3rd century.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
There's a thing here, Gregory of Nazianzus is talking about St. Basil's Hospital.
Yeah.
Do you want me to read that?
I can tell you even louder. St. Basil was the first one to establish the hospitals, but they didn't know how to call it because he would just gather all the sick, all the crippled, take care of them, and there were hundreds of them around because he was a bishop in his diocese. They did not know how to call them. They just called them Basilianums. They named it after him. They didn't know there was no notion that you gather all the sick people and treat them and help them.
Yeah.
This was unheard of anywhere, and they didn't have a word for it.
It's radical.
And so this was radical. They were called Basilianums, and we served St. Basil's liturgy. It was so lengthy. He wrote the liturgy. We serve it 10 times a year, and it was the liturgy of the church for centuries before we started serving St. John Chrysostom's liturgy. Anyways, beside the point, Basilianums they were called because Basil was the one who invented. You know, he started the whole thing. Yeah, and it was so massive that it got popular, and everyone.
Everyone needed it.
Yeah. There was no word for it, as I said.
Yeah.
Can you read it, Gregory? Sorry, I'm just
That's
interrupting.
What more a noble thing is philanthropy and the support of the poor and the assistance of human weakness. Go forth a little way from the city and behold the new city, which is the hospital, or it would have been a monastery, wouldn't it?
No, it wasn't a monastery. In Basil's time, they didn't know how to call. They called it Basilianums, like Basil buildings, whatever, Basil thing, Basil institution. They didn't know. It was unheard of.
So behold the new city, the storehouse of piety, the common treasury of the wealthy, in which the superfluities of their wealth and even their necessaries are stored in consequence of his exhortations, freed from the power of the moth. So he's saying like they're wealthy in philanthropy. No longer gladdening the eyes of the thief and escaping both the emulation of envy and the corruption of time, where disease is regarded in a religious light and a disaster is thought a blessing and sympathy is put to the test. My subject is the most wonderful of all, the short road to salvation, the easiest ascent to heaven, There is no longer before our eyes that terrible and piteous spectacle of men who are living corpses, the greater part of whose limbs have mortified, driven away from their cities and homes and public places and fountains, and from their own dearest ones, recognizable by their names rather than by their features. They are no longer brought before us to our gatherings and meetings in our common intercourse and union, no longer the objects of hatred instead of pity on account of their disease. Composers of pietist songs, if any of them have their voice still left to them. Why should I try to express in tragic style all our experiences when no language can be adequate to their hard lot? He, however, it was who took the lead in pressing upon those who were men, that they ought not to despise their fellow men, nor to dishonor Christ, the one head of all, by their inhuman treatment of them, but to use the misfortunes of others as an opportunity of firmly establishing their own lot, and to lend to God that mercy of which they stand in need at his hands. He did not therefore disdain to honor with his lips this disease, noble and of noble ancestry and brilliant reputation though he was, but saluted them as brethren, not as some might suppose from vainglory, but taking the lead in approaching to tend them as a consequence of his philosophy, and so giving not only a speaking but also a silent instruction. The effect produced is to be seen not only in the city but in the country and beyond, and even the leaders of society have vied with one another in their philanthropy and magnanimity towards them. Others have had their cooks and splendid tables, and the devices and dainties of confectioners and exquisite carriages, and soft flowing robes. Basil's care was for the sick and the relief of their wounds, and the imitation of Christ by cleansing leprosy, not by a word, but in deed.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. Yeah, Vasiliana. Should we call it a night?
Mhm.
All right. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Thanks, Gregory.
Good night.
thank you.
Good night, sweetie.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
It was nice seeing you all.